The state of Missouri is considering legislation that would ban all eviction moratoriums. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the state of Missouri. Now, as I've said before in some of my other videos, I invest in Missouri, okay? I have 4 duplexes that I own in Independence, Missouri, and that's a little town right outside of Kansas City, one of the Kansas City suburbs. So this is an important topic to me. Obviously, I do not like eviction moratoriums. I don't believe that they are legal ever. And the last thing I want to see is them being reinstituted or re-implemented the next time that there's some kind of, virus or something going around, or they could re-implement them for any other reason. Okay, they've got 100 reasons. They're like, oh, look, see, we did it in the past. So now they believe they can just keep doing that same thing, regardless of how much of a failure it was. Okay, so it bothers me that any of these states even had eviction moratoriums in the first place, or that anyone even followed them, because it was obviously not constitutional. It was obviously not constitutional. You can just read the Constitution and see it. But no, they put them in place anyway. And, I think what the state of Missouri is trying to do is the state legislator is trying to put in place these provisions so that local jurisdictions such as Kansas City or St. Louis, which are more left-leaning, more liberal, more anti-landlord, so that those small jurisdictions aren't able to put in an eviction moratorium for just a little small locality and screw landlords over there. So basically you would need to have permission from the state government in order to implement this kind of eviction moratorium. This is a smart thing, okay? Because Missouri overall is a much more right-leaning, much more friendly to landlords. But when you get into these little small pockets of urban areas, all of a sudden, they think that they're the coasts or something. They treat landlords like garbage out there, okay? Now, this kind of legislation works great on stuff like rent control and, anything basically that could normally, that normally these little small local jurisdictions would try to pass. So yeah, that's why I'm all for this. And I hope that it really is banned, at least in the state of Missouri, because that would make sure that I don't have to deal with it again in the future, But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's a good idea for states to ban eviction moratoriums? Or maybe, we can go further than that and just have Congress write into law that, hey, an eviction moratorium cannot be passed, unless it is approved by all of Congress and signed by the president, etc. We can go all the way, because I know the Supreme Court made a decision saying that the eviction moratorium wasn't legal, but I still feel like they're going to try to do this again, okay? And we need written out in legislation saying, no, this is not legal, and we're putting a stop to it before it happens again. So this article is coming from thefultonsun.com, and it says, eviction moratoriums, unlawful or lifeline? I don't believe they're a lifeline. I think they delay the inevitable. But let's see what this article says about it. An eviction moratorium was a lifeline for millions of households at the beginning of the pandemic. However, when the eviction ban ended in mid-2021, it left many who were housing insecure in a state of uncertainty. Some Missouri lawmakers have proposed legislation this session that would restrict future eviction moratoriums in the state. When the moratoriums were instituted by the CDC in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, eviction proceedings based on the non-payment of rent were prohibited because many Americans had lost their jobs or faced an uncertain financial future. Subsequently, some landlords and property owners went months without the stream of income they normally received from renters. Yeah, They bring up the fact that, hey, yeah, these renters, they did face financial hardship. I'm not denying that, okay? I am not denying the fact that, hey, there were a lot of renters who were put in a very, very bad situation by the government, mind you, but they were put in a situation where they couldn't go to work. They were basically laid off without pay. Their businesses were closed. The businesses they worked at were closed, okay? They shut down like gyms and restaurants. You couldn't sit in a restaurant and eat. It was insane, okay? Looking back now, I mean, I just see how crazy all of it was. But these people, they lost their jobs through no fault of their own. And it took a while before the government said, okay, we're going to allow these businesses to reopen, or we're going to allow people to go back to work. So I don't blame these renters, but my thought is that, hey, this is a temporary problem, okay? So at most, 2-3 months. And for that entire 2 to 3 months, the government should have been pumping money into the pockets of landlords because they caused it. But instead of that happening, they created rental assistance programs that took months on end to even get started, right? And they made the eviction moratorium last for more than a year in terms of the CDC, and 2 years in the case of many local and state jurisdictions. So the eviction moratorium thing, which should have been a small, temporary, short-term thing, ended up being a nightmare that lasted for years for landlords, some of whom never got any rental assistance money, okay? So when they talk about wanting to ban that from happening again, I 100% agree. And instead, what they should do is they should realize that if tenants are put into a situation like that again, they need to immediately roll out the rental assistance straight to the landlords, not to the tenants, but straight to the landlords to make sure those people can stay in their homes. But let's keep going. The moratorium, in my opinion, was certainly unlawful. Representative Chris Brown, Republican from Kansas City, said in public hearings on his House Bill 1682, which states, "No court shall impose or enforce a moratorium on eviction proceedings unless specifically authorized by state law." It was a clear violation of contract law and property rights, Brown said. Following the end of the federal eviction moratorium in August, some states and cities instituted their own moratoriums. I fear that going forwards, in particular, large municipalities with interest groups that put a lot of pressure on lawmakers, whether they be city council, whatever the case may be, that a municipality could put into place an eviction moratorium, Brown said. That's kind of the purpose to a degree behind this bill. Smart guy, okay? He realizes the fact that these small public interest groups, as they call them, will go out there. They'll be protesting outside of city council members' houses. They'll be protesting outside of City Hall. And these people make up a very tiny minority of the population, but they speak loud, okay? They speak loud, but they make up a tiny portion of the population. So, the city council or whatever, they get the impression that, oh, well, they must represent the majority of people out there. They don't. Okay, the majority of people respect property rights. The majority of people understand that rent has to be paid and that landlords cannot house people in their properties for free indefinitely. Okay, but these special interest groups put the pressure on these city councils, and then next thing you know, they have their own local eviction moratorium going on, and that's what this thing will prevent. And this, he's a smart guy, okay? And I'll give Chris Brown, I'll give him credit because, he's right when he says that it is a clear violation of contract law and property law or property rights, okay? So, yeah, he's saying the exact same thing I'm saying. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a landlord himself because he understands where we're coming from. Similar to HB 1682, HB 2360 would prohibit any city, town, or village from imposing or enforcing a moratorium on eviction proceedings unless specifically authorized by state law. HB 2360, which is sponsored by Representative Jim Murphy, Republican from St. Louis, has not yet moved to committee. So yeah, there's a second proposal by a second lawmaker in the state of Missouri, one from Kansas City, one from St. Louis, and they're saying the same thing, okay? And I realize that part of the reason that these lawmakers are doing this is because they're not the local lawmakers. They are, state level representatives, right? So they're going to propose these things because, hey, one of them lives in Kansas City, one of them lives in St. Louis. They live in these major cities, and they're often at the whims of whatever their little city council is doing. And if you don't like it, tough. That's what they tell people, So what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, hey, we're trying to go beyond what the city council thinks, and put into place laws within the entire state that protect landlords, protect property rights, and are constitutional. Okay. So yeah, I completely agree with these guys. And I hope that this ban on eviction moratoriums passes because, simply put, landlords, we deserve to, get paid what we are owed. We deserve for our contracts to be, followed and legal, and not to have the government interfering with our businesses. Okay. So yeah, this personally affects me, and I am 100% in support of it.